What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 40 of Nintendo Noise, Flip Screen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Chuy Plays.
Goodbye, goodbye.
Welcome back, Chuy. You were gone for a whole week, out there gallivanting across the Old West. I didn't dox you. I didn't tell the kids where you were. Now that you're back, I guess you could if you want, but...
Well, I was just going to... officially, we've all missed an episode now. So...
No, I don't think Steve has. Has he?
Yeah, I think I have.
I think Steve had.
You did? Okay,
I think
all
the
right.
one where Parker was on, he could only do like 8 p.m.
You're
so
right.
it's too late for me.
Okay, so yeah, there you go. We've all missed one episode now. You had the record for a really long time, Chuy.
Yeah. Still pretty good record, though.
You still have the best record of, like, consecutive episodes for, like, 2 more, right? Because I missed our 3rd episode, I think. So in 2 episodes, I'll have caught up to your record of most consecutive episodes.
Messed up. I thought you were gone twice, though.
Oh, you know what? No, because I missed. You're right. I missed while I was away from my vacation. Yeah, no, so you're the reigning champ, buddy. Steve's coming
Forever.
for you, though.
Yeah, I can hold it out. I think I'm gonna win this one, but we'll see. Because I'm on holiday in July, so probably not.
Oh yeah, no, never mind. Chewy's got it. It's on lock, baby.
Yep, never gonna leave.
I'll have to stay on for the next 40 episodes and just make sure that he misses one.
Yeah, your honeymoon's cancelled, Pete. Did you not hear? You've got to stay here just to keep your title.
Yeah, you're right. This title is never gonna be mine. I'm just gonna. You know what? I give up. You know what, Chuy? You're a better competitor than me. You can take it. Good for you, buddy.
Thank you. I'll accept the victory along with all your points for all of our bets.
Whoa. That's not how that works. Come on now. I'm the reigning champ over there. I got to keep something going. We'll see how that one nets out. It's coming up. You know, it's almost June, so the Summer Games Fest is soon to be upon us. So I think a lot of our predictions are either going to get proven or disproven in the next couple of weeks here.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what we're here to talk about this week. This week, we got a couple things to talk about. We're going to do a little bit of catch up with Chuy. We're going to talk about some of the games he played while he was away. We're going to talk a little bit about Reggie Fils-Aime's book, Disrupting the Game, from the Bronx to the top of Nintendo.
As spoiler-free as possible, because I have started, and I really want to get through without spoilers. I keep hearing tidbits of like the cool Nintendo bits, because I know the majority of it is not Nintendo, right?
I would say it's like about 50-50.
Yeah, it's pretty split in half, I would say.
Like the first half of the book is like his early years, like his schooling and his first couple like corporate gigs, you know? Like he talks about his time at like Pizza Hut and like Guinness and a couple other brands that he was briefly involved with. And then the last, I would say 50 to 40% of it is probably about him being the president of NOA. Well, not entirely, because he had a role there before that. So it's his career at Nintendo.
Yeah.
So quite a bit. But anyway, we'll talk about that. And then we've got a ton of questions out here in the question block, a bunch of good ones. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Mario Strikers, I think, if time allows. So we'll see how much we get to here. It's a packed episode, all right, folks? So let's just jump right into it. But before that, let me tell you that this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of May. They are, of course, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valens, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Mary Berry, Smilky Shake, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all are the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this fine program. Speaking of which, there are a bunch of ways that you can show your support for what we're doing here at Nintendo Noise and Flip Screen Games as a whole. If you want to head over to the Patreon, you can get a bunch of perks and goodies, including our exclusive podcast, One More Thing, early access to this and the Flip Screen Games podcast, a Twitch archive, and a bunch of other cool stuff. So however you choose, whatever level you get involved in over there, some good bang for your buck. I'm happy to say that. And then, of course, if you don't have any money to throw our way, that's no big deal. There's a bunch of ways you can get involved and support the show for free. Give us a like, give us a share. If you're watching over on the YouTube channel, give us a subscribe. You can head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can have links. You can find links, on all the other ways for you to get involved in the community or for you to write into the show. Our Discord, our email address, social media. Come get involved. Write in for next week's show. Get in the question block. Come join the community. However you choose to get involved. We appreciate you for choosing to spend your time here. So, Chuy, I know you've got some bullet points for me here, right? You went on vacation. You've been gone for a week. It's been a little bit more than that since we've been able to chat. You have got your hands on a Nintendo Switch Online N64 controller after quite a bit of trying to get one. How you getting on with that?
Okay. I ordered it just before going on vacation, and then I didn't quite know when it was going to come because it took, I think, a few days before they actually shipped it out. And then, of course, they ship it out, and it's going to arrive while I'm gone. And so I was like, well, great. Now I'm just going to have to see it when I get back, I guess. But I got back kind of late last night and then went to the mail, and I was like, sweet, time to get this controller, see how it is. As soon as I picked it up, I was just like, man, I don't remember this feeling so uncomfortable. It's like, it's such a funky controller and everything. It's it's one that's very tied to my childhood and I'm very nostalgic for it. But it's just like, it's not
great.
It just doesn't feel good right away. I think now as I hold it more, I do feel like I'm getting used to it, but I switched like back and forth between this and the Pro Controller, and I was just like, man, Pro Controller is really nice.
I just like
right away.
It's so weird to me that like nobody in Nintendo R&D was like, people don't have three hands though. You know, it's like, oh
yeah. We were talking about this off mic though. That have you ever seen a box for the controller?
Yeah, where you're supposed to have the three different ways you can hold it for different kinds of games.
It's like you can hold it this way for like 2D platformers, or hold it this way for first-person shooters, or hold it this way for God knows what anyone ever held it with the stick and the D-pad.
There are two ways to hold it. There are two ways to hold it, no matter how much they try to have you hold just the directional pad and joystick, right? What setup is that? What game does that? None.
Zero. Yeah. It's weird.
So,
and I don't know. It's certainly very interesting and like, you know, innovative in its own way. It's the first controller with like a joystick, proper joystick as we know them today. So it's like, you know, I'm not going to totally shit on the thing, but such a weird controller.
It's the world's worst joystick. They go loose after about 20 minutes. It doesn't feel great. I really do not like that stick at all.
I'll tell you what, that's one of those things where I think in general I took better care of my controllers than the average kid. I never had that problem with the like, oh, the sticks immediately break. It's like, I think you're just manhandling this thing in ways you're not supposed to, gang. We're not supposed to put our palms on it.
I remember you saying that about like Joy-Con drift though, and then all of a sudden, like all of your Joy-Cons went at once.
You're right, and that did eventually come for me.
That goes in.
But I still have my original N64 controllers, and the stick ain't broken, buddy. It still works.
That tug of war on Mario Party did it for everyone.
My old controller, unfortunately, it's like in a box. Like my original ones, I had the gray and the atomic purple. Originally.
Yeah, same.
Those are still in a box. I have this like bootleg blue one out right now because it's like the one that doesn't have a really loose joystick. Like those still work, but the joystick is just so loose. It's like, how do I do anything with this at this point? But I'm wondering how long it'll take before this one gets to that point, because it does look like, from the top, from the outside, it looks like it's just the same build.
Damn,
as the
they didn't even try to fix it.
It's the same. No, it's totally the same. There's like some YouTube videos where people have taken the new part from that controller and put it in the old ones. Like you can just swap them out. It's kind of crazy, really.
Oh, that's cool.
That is cool. I kind of want to do that with the Atomic
tempting,
Purple,
yeah.
right? Like that was my main N64 controller. That's sick.
Yeah. So it's very true to the original. The differences are, it's wireless, you plug it in. It didn't come with like a charging cable at all or anything, so you
Oh,
just kind
you
of have
mean
to.
you didn't get the like the 2-inch one that you got with the Pro Controller? That thing was so pathetically small. It was just like, what am I plugging this into?
Yeah, yeah. They didn't even stick that in there. It's literally just like if you have a USB-C cable to plug in and charge it, good for you, but otherwise nothing. So,
That's whack.
yeah, it's chargeable. It has a little tiny nub at the top that's like the ZR button, and then there's a home and
Oh, so you
screenshot
can
button
use it like a
too.
regular controller.
Um, sort of. Like all of the C stick, the not even the C stick, the C buttons are all directional buttons. They don't like replace X or Y or anything. It's just like another up,
I
down, left,
see.
right. As I was like moving around and messing with it, I was like, what can I do with this thing? B and A still work like that, but literally everything else is like directional. The D-pad, directional, joystick, directional, buttons, directional. So at least when you're outside of like the N64 games themselves, they just kind of default to that. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's been really fun. Like it rumbles. It feels like the old Rumble packs that I
Yeah.
had back in the day. The one thing they filled in the little gap, on the back of the controller, and I was just like, man, I would love to have just like stuck some of the old accessories in there just for fun, even if they didn't do anything. Just like grabbed
Just to
my
have
old
it.
expansion pack or something, or what was that one called?
Yeah, no, you're right.
The one where
Oh wait, no. The expansion pack went in the thing. It was the Rumble
Yeah, I
pack.
went in the N64, right? And then there was the pack that was like, here, plug in your Pokemon game so you can play
Yeah,
on Pokemon Stadium.
that one had a special name
Um,
too. But
yeah, I had it last week or so.
You have the microphone thing that can plug
hey,
in there as well.
Pikachu,
I always wanted that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
that game
yeah,
so ahead of its
not good.
time to the point
But
where it
also
is
it didn't
bad.
work.
Yeah, it just did not work.
Yeah, let's just think of it as a precursor to Nintendogs, which eventually had also pretty terrible voice
Yeah,
And hey
controls.
Pikachu, hey Pikmin, right? They did that actual legit follow up on 3DS.
Yeah, I think the only way they ever got those mics to work was, I think, yeah, the 3DS. I think you could call your villagers on New Leaf with the megaphone, and they would just like shout out if they were anywhere in the area. That was
That's quite
very
fun.
nifty. And then just like blowing in it for like some little games, like
There
usually
was some
WarioWare.
Yeah, there was some cool like uses of it on the DS. I remember specifically. I liked the GameCube one as well, like the GameCube attention, but I only ever had it working with Mario Party. I don't know if they ever added support to other games.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a couple of those mics for Mario Party 6 and 7, I think used them, right?
hmm
Yeah, those were fun.
Yeah, I went
Those are
into the
great.
memory card port rather than like an
that's
actual
so
controller.
weird.
It was like memory
Yeah.
card B slot. It was really bizarre.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I
It-
don't remember those.
They're weird. I wonder. I'd have to dig through my parents. I know those are still there. They have them.
Yeah. They're such weird looking as well. People are like a grey tube with like a blue rubber button on the side, and you like press the button, and it's just like this grey cylinder.
Yeah, they
It's
look like those real cheap, skinny microphones if you took off the little like what is it? Noise protector, pop
Mhm.
Yeah,
filter
pop
thing.
filter.
Yeah. So
That's so
they're
weird.
funky.
That's so strange.
But yeah, I opened it up last night. I played some Banjo-Kazooie. That's the only game I really uh, dove into with it thus far. I beat when Banjo-Kazooie came out, I played Mumbo's Mountain, went through the whole first level and everything. And then yesterday I went through the whole second level, Treasure Trove Cove, I think it's called.
I think that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, so went through all of that, got all 10 jiggies, got all 100 notes, and then was like, where are the little extra honeycomb pieces? I don't remember. I'm done.
Done forever or like just for now?
Done for that night. It was kind
Okay.
of late by
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to
So
me.
I was like, oh, okay, we're good. But yeah, I love that it's still in working condition, doesn't have a little wiggly joystick, and I think of all the controllers, because they have several of them now. They have the NES, the Super Nintendo controllers. This one was like an easy one for me to want to jump on, just because the controls are pretty different. At
Yeah.
least the layout to the controls are very different compared to what we have on like the Pro Controller or Joy-Con. So this felt like I want to experience these games with like the controller they were intended to be experienced with, because
Yeah.
the any other replacement to it just doesn't like quite capture it.
I think
And
unless
it's
unless a game
very
was like specifically remade and remapped, it's really hard for that to
yeah.
translate well.
Hmm.
It's just awkward.
Yeah, so it and I mean the controller itself is still awkward, real awkward feeling when you hold it and play with it, but I am getting slowly used to the feeling again. I'm like, oh, okay, my memories of this is coming back. I feel like I can do things in this game again.
Yeah, I still would like to try to get my hands on one of these at some point.
Hmm.
Like I think for that reason, like I definitely feel like it makes a difference in terms of like making those N64 games feel more playable, you know?
Hmm.
But even, we were just talking about this on our sister show, the Flip Screen Games podcast this week, because we were talking about Sony bringing some of the retro titles to the all new PS Plus, and like whether Steve and I are still interested in that now that we have the Steam Deck. And I feel like even with that, I kind of want this controller so that if I was going to play N64 games on my Steam Deck, I could use an N64 controller, just because it's just, I feel like it's legit the hardest controller to map, because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it has 8 buttons. Like, how awkwardly do you want to map these to like random other stuff? And like,
I don't know. I feel like they did a decent job with the mapping. Like the C buttons just go to the second stick, right, on the emulator, and that seems to make logical sense for most of them. Where that's like moving the camera, like in Mario 64,
yeah,
and then it's kind of just like the rest of them are fine.
A,
Like A and
B,
B can stay where they are.
yeah, yeah,
But
I
I mean,
guess,
even those are kind of reversed. Like the layout, I'm
They
looking
are,
at my Pro
yeah.
yeah.
controller right now. Um, B is at the bottom on Pro controller, and then A is kind of at the bottom on the N64 controller, and then B on the N64 controller is off to the left while it's on the right on the Pro controller. And then I think they
It's just
mapped like
weird.
down C to X or something. I don't know. There's some awkward things to it
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I just feel like overall it's like. I don't know if you're playing those games, they're definitely built with those with that in mind. So
It's not
it
ideal,
feels
and it
less
really
awkward.
makes me wish that they would add like the ability to remap per game in those emulators.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Hmm.
sure. It just
Yeah,
feels like
and
a thing that would be nice to be able to have a little bit of control, considering you're
Yeah,
not
just be
using
like,
the
oh,
native device.
yeah, because like some games, the C buttons are actually used for functional things, whereas
Right.
in other games they're just like camera controls, which is I think what their original intention was in Mario 64.
hmm
But in
And
like
I kind of
Zelda,
the
that's how
C
you use
buttons
your
do.
items.
Yeah,
yes,
same with like Banjo-Kazooie too. Like the C buttons do a lot. That's a lot of your move set right there. Um, it makes me though. I want to see if it works on the Mario 64 like remaster. I want to see how that feels with it if it remaps to that or anything. I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe. That'd be cool.
Hmm.
I think I remember them adding support for that. And I remember seeing a video, I think it was from My Life in Gaming, where they compared all of the emulated versions of Mario 64. And one of the reasons they said that they think people find the game really difficult to get back to now is because none of the official emulated versions do a good job of mapping it to a modern stick. Like the range of motion in that stick, because it's got such a small pivot point compared to like a modern controller, Mario can do like a sneaky thing and like he ramps up the speed very like linearly, whereas on like a modern controller there's that like dead zone in the middle and then it all of a sudden like shifts.
Yeah.
So he goes from like 0 to like 20% speed straight away, whereas on an
Sure.
N64 controller he
Mhm.
very much is like slow, so you can go through some of those more intricate puzzle levels.
Yeah, I remember watching some speedrunners go through it, and with like the Pro Controller and Joy-Con, they really pointed out just like Mario does move in like 8 directions in this game, even though there's a joystick here. So the little divots that this controller has, the N64 controller has, really help point him in that correct direction. So um, yeah, it's just like weird little things that the games are designed around that nobody has really captured since then.
What I want to do now is let's make a series of videos, Chewy, where we have us do verses in games that you're really good at, and you have to use the N64 controller. So like we'll play against each other in Splatoon, and you like can't use gyro, you can't turn the camera.
Can you
That'd
play
be
Elden
so
Ring with that
difficult.
as well, please, Pete? I really want to see you play Elden
The
Ring with
fucking
the
N64
N64
controller.
controller.
Followed
even-
by the Guitar Hero guitar
Yeah.
session.
I mean, it must be doable, right? Like, folks have beaten those games with way wackier things. But
Yeah,
like,
someone played it with a ring con, so it must be possible.
I don't know how the hell
Yeah.
I would map all the things I would need to do in the game to an N64 controller, but we'll figure it out. It does have those extra buttons on the top, so could I? How the hell would I? I'd have to play it on PC, I guess, and then map it.
Yeah, you probably would.
Yeah, because there's no way my Xbox is gonna let me plug this N64
But play with an
controller.
N64 controller? No, definitely not.
Mm-mm.
Unless it's Banjo, and then it just It's like, oh look, you did it. You unlocked the secret
That'd
the
be
secret
interesting.
mode. You're the
Yeah.
only person who's ever tried to do this. Congratulations. So I'm glad you're getting on well with it, Chewy. You're gonna have to report back and let us know like if you're still using it, or do you find that like it's incentivizing you to play more N64 games, or was it just kind of like a fun little walk down memory lane? I'll be interested to see how you feel about it.
Yeah, I'll say going into it, I definitely got it because I was like, I feel like I want to play these N64 games, but I want to play them with the controller. So
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah.
All right, well, keep us posted. And then you also have been spending some time with Xenoblade Chronicles. So
Yeah.
why don't you just, because it's been a bit of a journey. So why don't you just tell us how that's been going, where are you at now, and has it killed your enthusiasm for the third game?
I am in pretty deep right now. I finally went back, finally finished the first game. You both saw me come in one night where I was just so mad at the entire process because it was just like one character at the end there is just the definition of moving the goalpost. Like every time I ran into him, he was like, "Oh, you just have to beat this thing before you can get to me." And then even to get to that thing, it's like, "Oh, well, let me mess up this whole map real quick, and you have to fight these other things before you can get to that thing, and then get to me." And then I get to them, and then he just kept putting roadblocks in front of me, and I'm like, "Dude, this is the last chapter of the game. Like, let it flow a little bit." And I think the part that annoyed me the most about it was that I couldn't just beat all the things that he threw into me. I had to stop completely, go grind some more levels, and then finally be able to beat it.
That's
And
infuriating.
I was so mad. I was like, I am so close at the end now. I'm not going to stop because I'm this close, but I really want to stop. But I'm kind of glad I didn't because like the actual end part was just like hilariously anime, completely worth watching. And overall, what I would have liked better to be that sequence where it was like, oh, here's some back-to-back baddies, but you can beat them before the final boss. And then I think I died once on the final boss, and then I was like, oh, I was pretty close. I'll give it another go. And then things just got like, after that was just long cutscene ending type of thing before it was like new game plus, and I was like, no, not again. But
Not if you paid me.
yeah, but I will say the ending did redeem it for me, where I was just like, this is so weird, hilarious and amazing that I'm just into it. It's the strangest ending.
Where have you
Um,
been playing this? Oh, if I remember correctly, you were playing on 3DS, right?
yeah, I don't know how they got the game on 3DS, but
It was one of the
that's the one I
new
was.
3DS games, right?
Yeah, it's one of the two new 3DS games I think they had. Um, but yeah, it's one of the new 3DS games slash new 2DS, whichever one you have, it'll work on either of those. But um, I played it there because at the time I had gotten it. My original copy on the Wii, my brother had that, and I was living in a different state, and I was like, "Ah, I don't know when I'm gonna get to this." So I got a huge portion of the way through the game on that, and never ended up finishing it. And now I was just like, well, I could start all over again and do the Switch version because I did get that, so I could play the like future connected thing in between that's supposed to go between one and two. And I was like, I'm pretty far on this. And I looked it up and I was like, oh, I can just play this like future connected DLC thing. And I was like, okay, cool. Um, I got it on sale. Worth it. um, but yeah, so I beat it on 3DS. Still pretty amazing they got the game on there. I will say, like, as bad as it looks, the 3D is kind of cool on it because they did make it like fully 3D. Not fully 3D. There were some cutscenes that were like, no, no 3D here. But like the parts where it did have it, I would turn it on here and there, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a 3DS. Amazing. And then I turned it off because I was like, I'm not going to give myself a headache doing this. Um, but yeah, finished the first one, have since hopped into the second game, and I am on chapter 3 at the moment.
Wait, you
I
didn't
think
play the
there's 10.
little thing in between them?
Not yet. I've decided to do it like not chronologically, but in order of release.
Release order,
So
sure. Yeah.
yeah, first game, second game, then it's like second game DLC, then it's first game DLC, right?
Okay.
That's the official order that they came out in. So I'm doing that, and then I think that's fine, just because I think the actual like mainline games are the longest part of it, and I'd at least want to have those done before the third one. We'll see how long that takes. I'm already 20 hours deep in this.
Good God.
I I do this thing where I just can't help getting into the side quests and doing all the stuff that I shouldn't be wasting my time with. But after running into those like hard stops at the end of that first one where had to go and grind, I was just like, no, forget it. I'm just gonna be over leveled for
Yeah,
everything.
you're probably better off doing it now than having to like do boring grinding later if you could just be doing
Yeah,
content, you know?
yeah.
That makes
So
sense to me.
that. So I've just committed myself to, all right, we're doing a bunch of side stuff, we're doing some weird things. First game, I really like how everybody is naked in that game, I guess. Like it's not just like the female characters in there. Like there's literally some armor in kind of halfway point of the game that's just oil. And so I just have like all these lathered up men running around because their armor is oil, like they're just shiny and muscly. And I was like, all right, cool. Second game definitely needs more of that. I would say it definitely leans like, oh, here's the female body on display for you, right? And it's over the top, it's ridiculous. There's one point where what's her name, Pyra, is actually like covered up for just like the story called for her to be in disguise and stuff, and I was like, this is fine. Like this is 100% fine. There's like it's honestly needless how gratuitous they take that in this game, but
That's
yeah.
one of my pet peeves in video games. It really is when like the clothing just does not match the job, and it's like you're going out and you're fighting. Seriously, put some clothes on. One, you're probably in
Yeah.
mountains. It's going to be a bit chilly. You might want to cover up. And two, you don't want like arrows or swords or bullets or whatever it may be to hurt you. You're going to want to make sure your clothes or your armor is fit for purpose.
hmm Yeah, and I think the other thing with it is like I wouldn't mind as much if it were like kind of on equal footing with each gender and everything that's portrayed in the games, right? Like the first one, I was like, I'm fine with this. I think even the men were showing more skin than any of the other characters
There's
at points.
sexy shirtless Shulk, right?
Yeah, that is a true way you can dress Shulk up the whole time. Um, but yeah, they it's just the women in Xenoblade Chronicles too. There's like, and you're just like, this feels like needless, pretty wrong. But
I,
overall, the game's been fun.
that's
I
such
think
a
the battle system's much improved. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that as a thing is like something that really just like turns me off of, and like it's true in like a lot of media, right? But like it happens a lot in Japanese media, and like it is always like I hate it because I'm just like, even if it's something that I like, I'm like, oh, I'm embarrassed by this. Like I'm embarrassed
Yeah.
by the fact that I like this, and I don't want to recommend it to people because like even if the gameplay is good, it's like it's cringy, you know? Like it's
Yeah.
I don't know. It's that kind of thing is like definitely a turn off. And it's like
Eh,
not to say that like video games can never be sexy or like never have sexy characters. Like that's not. But I feel like there's like such a difference between like when
it's very male gaze.
yeah, and
oriented
it's
in
like
this one.
so like when it is that one sided, it just feels like egregious and weird, you know, and like
Mhm.
kind of gross.
Well, I think you can be a sexy character without needing to do that, though. Like
Mhm.
Nathan Drake, for example, I think people probably find him a little bit sexy. I think people find
Steve's-
like
Steve's-
Aloy, for example.
Steve's like, I find Nathan Drake sexy. You're like, I
The way
I
he
think
just
some
like
people
barely
might.
makes a jump and hangs. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean that is amazing. Yeah. I don't know, and I think like the revived like Tomb Raider, for example. I love what they did with how obviously it took like cues from many different things, and then like I think future games like Horizon took cues from that, and
Mhm.
I feel like we've progressed, especially
For sure.
in the West.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe some games are a little left behind and could do with catching up.
Yeah, I don't know where that decision came from. Like, I don't remember Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U being like that at all. Like, everybody seemed like pretty armored up in that one.
They're like, look, our
And
fan
then-
base is not horny enough. You know, it's like
Yeah.
we want to get in on some of that Fire Emblem horniness.
But even
You
like
can-
Fire
you
Emblem,
can
like
have that,
there's
like-
decent
yeah.
armor in Fire Emblem,
Yeah.
right?
Sure, but like, look at like the
Some of them are out there.
like
Yeah,
look at
for
like
sure.
the two different versions of Byleth, right? And it's like the male Byleth is like in like very normal armor, and like female Byleth has like hot pants, and like there's like a part of it's like sheer, like she's definitely sexier than he is, right? Like no doubt about it.
True. But I mean, there's like thousands of characters basically in Fire Emblem at this point, so there is like a lot of different.
There's plenty of
ones
hot
to
greased
draw
up
from.
dudes. That's definitely true. You know, but you know, could probably be more.
There will be more. They'll keep making them, and they'll keep making more. Every game's got a new cast.
New
so.
waifus, new husbandos. It's great.
Mhm.
So you were talking about the battle system.
Yeah. The battle system is, I'd say, much improved. The first one really relied on this like topple system, which was basically like get these right moves in order to break a character, which will make them susceptible to toppling, and then once you topple them, your regular armies, or I guess your regular party's weapons will do damage. This was especially helpful against like the Mechon, where they were only hurt by the Minato sword kind of thing. This one ignores all that junk because it was honestly tired by the end of it. 50 million battles that you play, right? This one's got... It's a weird gacha system where you have like blades that you can summon. Because I'll remind you, the weirdest part about Pyra herself is that she's a crystal who's like in a sword, like that. She's not actually
That old
sexy girl.
chestnut.
Yeah, that's the weirdest part about it. Like all of these things, all of these like beings are like weapons, they're blades, and people resonate with them and then they come to life, and they can be sexy women like Pyra, or they can just be like lion things, like animals, and there's a bunch of different ones. And so as you play the game, you'll get these core crystals, and then you can summon more, and then they'll basically give you new weapons to work with and new moves that you can work with. And so they've messed with that system in a way where I'm like, oh, this is finally like interesting, like more consistently interesting throughout the game, because you have different things to keep track of. Uh, I've seen, if you have you both seen like those pictures of like the UI just of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and just how obtuse and complex and
Not
weird it is?
not really, no.
There's a lot going on the screen at any given time, and I'm getting to that point where I'm like, oh man, another thing to keep track of here on this
Okay.
menu.
Yeah.
And so like there's a lot going on at any given time, but I think overall I'm like getting used to it. I'm getting used to how the battles work, and then the combos that you can build up are pretty awesome. Once you start like you get like special little cutscenes with little action command sequences, and you're like, oh, that was cool. Did a ton of damage here. Took out the entirety of this army in one go. That was awesome. So, yeah, overall the battle system's like way better than the first one. And the story so far is intriguing. It's got some cool mysteries to it. Definitely some stuff where I'm like, oh, there's like I don't know how many years after the events of the first one this one's taking place, but clearly stuff has changed, and I'm really intrigued by where it's going so far.
So are you?
I guess you might fill in the missing pieces with that Xenoblade
Yeah, the
1
DLC.
DLC.
Probably.
Yeah, I think so.
So-
Yeah, and I know people are like digging into like all the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 trailers, and I'm like, I don't even want to watch those yet because I know I'll just be confused.
Because I mean, that comes out in July, right? They got moved up to.
Yeah,
Are you?
yeah, same day as Digimon Survive.
Are
What a
you gonna
day.
play that like at all though? Like, or do you think you're gonna try and beat this and then jump into that, or are you gonna be like totally fucking Xenobladed out by the time that comes out?
I guess I'm gonna have to see how I feel by the
Sure.
time we get there. Because like I said, I'm chapter 3 on this one. I think there's 10 chapters total.
Okay.
So I've got a long ways to go. So I don't know how I feel once I get there, but
You are our
I don't
only
know,
chance at having coverage of this game, Chewy.
yeah, but I mean, there's Digimon Survive too, and I'm feeling really tactical right now. You brought up Fire Emblem already, and I'm like, yeah, Fire Emblem. Let's
Fair
do
enough.
it.
You know, friend of the show, Sierra's already going to be playing
That's true.
Digimon Survive, and Pete's probably going to be
Me
playing
too.
Digimon Survive. So I think you just have to take one for the team and play Xenoblade instead. I think that's just how it's going to be.
Or we all play Digimon and then we bully Steve into playing it, and he plays like 10 minutes of it. And he's like, "Nah, it's no good."
If it's good,
You won't.
then
Play it.
I'll play it. My concern is I get bullied into playing games by you lot a lot, and I never end up liking them. And that's not true. Not never, but often. Like it's usually Pokemon. I'll be honest.
I have given up on trying to get you to play Pokemon. You bullied yourself into playing that last
I
time.
know. I had FOMO. I wanted to play it. Everyone was saying how great it was, and I was like, I want to be on this wagon so bad.
It is great.
But I still didn't enjoy it. So
It's the best
I
game
am
on the
wondering,
Switch this year
though.
so far.
Arceus, I loved it.
It's my hot take.
But I am wondering, like, what would the next generation of Pokemon have to do for you to like connect with it, Steve?
voice acting and decent environments. I think the environments were lacking a lot in Arceus.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think both of those things together, I think, would make me feel a little bit more connected with the game. That and I think a more compelling story. I didn't give two shits about that story in Arceus. I really didn't. And I get that you're not really meant to care about the story in Pokemon games at all. That's not
Yeah.
why people play the games. But
They're
this was
written
the
for
time.
10-year-olds.
Yeah, but this was the time they had to like write a really, really cool, compelling story, and it feels like they blew it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I'll say I also agree with you there. Like, definitely get like Monolith on those environments or something. Somebody who can build that in a decent way. And voice acting is the has always been the weirdest thing for me with Pokemon. Just because like they have the anime, they have voice actors, they've worked with
It's
that
so weird.
before, and I'm like, why don't you just add it already? Like,
I feel like before Sword and Shield it made sense because it's like there's a limited amount of space on cartridges, right? So it's like fair enough. But now it's like, you could do it if you really
but now
wanted
there's
to.
more space on
Yeah,
cartridges.
it's like you could definitely do it, but
I mean, there's unlimited space really when you think about it, because most of the games are just like come with a requires download thing anyway. It's only Nintendo published games where they actually put it on the cartridge.
Yeah.
true.
Hmm.
Yeah, we'll see, I guess. So before we jump into the question block, let's close it out with we'll briefly talk about Reggie's book. I imagine we'll talk about it at some point in the future if Steve ever gets around to finishing it. But Chuy, you're making your way through it, and it actually coincides with a special date. So today, as of this recording, the 24th, over on the Nintendo subreddit, there's a user, Robotic Operating Bud, who posted a on this day in Nintendo history, and had a bit about Satoru Iwata, because of course, very very significant character in Reggie's book. Iwata became the fourth president, and I'm reading from Robotic Operating Bud's post here, so thank you for the write up. Satoru Iwata became the fourth president and chief executive officer of Nintendo. Under Iwata's direction, Nintendo developed the Nintendo DS and Wii video game consoles, helping the company achieve financial success. As a self-declared gamer, he focused on expanding the appeal of video games across all demographics through a blue ocean business strategy. The company attained record profits by 2009, and Barron's placed Iwata among the top 30 CEOs worldwide. Iwata subsequently expanded his blue ocean strategy by defining a quality of life product line for the Wii that later evolved into a 10-year business strategy to create standalone products. Later hardware such as the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U proved far less profitable than the Wii, and Nintendo's net sales fell by 2/3 from 2009 to 2012. The company observed its first operating loss in 30 years during this time. Throughout his career, Iwata built a strong relationship with Nintendo fans through social media and his regular appearances in Iwata Asks and Nintendo Directs. So I wanted to call this out for a couple reasons. Of course, to celebrate the anniversary of Mr. Iwata's appointment to the role. But something that I thought that Robotic left out of this explanation that I think speaks a lot to his character, right, is Nintendo had that first operating loss in 30 years, and that was the year that he famously cut his salary I believe, by half, so that he wouldn't have to fire anybody and that there wouldn't be any layoffs amid this period. And then, of course, he was also very, very important in setting the roadmap for the Nintendo Switch, though, unfortunately, he passed before it ever launched. He was instrumental in its success. So, of course, a man that you could say a lot about, and you could, rattle off the many, many games he's been involved in, whether it was like his time at HAL or, the work he did like behind the scenes on games like Pokemon Gold and Silver. And he famously, when he wasn't even a programmer anymore, like crunched and helped that game get across the bow when it was having some trouble. And he's actually the reason that the whole section where you go to Kanto was able to fit on the cartridge, because he found a cool workaround. Just truly an incredible executive. When it comes to the world of games, there are so many suits in the gaming world, and Iwata was rare for being somebody who was, obviously at the height of Nintendo's powers, right, the most important person in the company, but he was a programmer and a player first. I think everybody remembers that quote. I believe it was from GDC, where he said that it was on his business card. He's a president. In his mind, he's a game developer, but in his heart, he's a gamer. And I think there aren't many people that actually steer the ships at these companies that have that kind of pedigree and that kind of lineage. So yeah, and there's a lot of really nice anecdotes about him in Reggie's book. So I've been thinking about him a lot lately for the first time in a while. And it's got me wanting to double back and and check out Iwata Asks, which came out just a few months ago. I have a copy and I haven't gotten around to it yet, which was the book.
Oh, it's really, really good. Like learning about how he used to just go to like a computer shop and stuff because he couldn't afford a computer and he would like program there and stuff. And then
Yeah.
that's how he got like his first programming job. It was just like, hey, do you want to come and make a game for me? Like you're here quite a lot. And like it all progressed from there. It was really cool. Like like you say, he truly was a developer and a programmer, and it's like I think it's extremely rare to find someone who has that lineage. Even Reggie, for example, he came from like a marketing background. He came from those other companies and came to Nintendo, whereas Iwata came from within the ranks. He was a programmer and a designer and a developer at HAL.
A damn good one at that.
To Nintendo, yeah.
He could have done that for the rest of his career, easily.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to say he's like, even after being president, I think I don't remember if this is correct, but I feel like I heard that he'd still like hop in and help with some compression. Development.
The Pokemon story that I just told, that one I think was after he had already transitioned out of being a developer, and he was, I don't know if he was president at that time, but he was an executive, and he heard that they were having trouble, and I'm pretty sure the story goes that he went and like rolled up his sleeves and worked on it for like a weekend and was like, here, I solved the problem, see you later. And like had no responsibility to do that, just did it just because.
Yeah. And another wild thing that like nobody, at least this didn't point out too much, up until this point, Nintendo was just like a family member was the president,
That's
right?
true.
Like they were all relatives to the founder and that sort of thing. So he's the fourth president at Nintendo after 100 or so years, right? And this is the first person going into the role that's not like a family member.
Yeah, I believe the lineage is the founder of the company was the first president. His son-in-law was the second one, and then I believe that guy's grandson was Iwata's predecessor.
Yeah,
the Yamauchi family, right? I think is.
Mm-hmm.
I believe is.
That's the one.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's a big thing because it's like I've said it time and time again. Like Japan and Japanese companies are so traditional, so tied to just how they do things and everything. So it's always this really shakes things up for a company that's that old, and just to bring in this like truly fresh perspective. So he did a lot. There's definitely a lot in the book too.
There's a lot of conversation about that in the book too, that I thought was really interesting about how I think Reggie seemed to imply that he felt that part of the reason that he and Iwata became such good friends is because Mr. Iwata was, kind of an outsider, right? Like in that role, right? Having not been a member of the family, not having the same kind of executive background that other people who might have been considered did, and he felt like he was an outsider and that he needed allies to support his agenda and to help push Nintendo into a new era, and I think he early on identified Reggie as somebody that he could count on and that knew what he was talking about and got results, and yeah. Definitely a lot of really good stuff in the book about their relationship and kind of the mutual respect that it was built on, and like some cool stories into kind of like the more private side of their relationship. So definitely a book worth checking out if you're a Nintendo head.
I will say though too, like it reads like business school literature. As somebody who went and got a degree in business and everything, I was like, oh, this is like all my college classes reading material basically. So
it's very much the format of the book is very much like, here's a chapter, right, about I don't know, his job when he was at Pizza Hut, right, and he'll tell this story, and then it's like the so what, right? So it's like, okay, I told you this story about my life. What's the takeaway from this, right? What are you supposed to learn from or what did I learn from this experience that I want
Each
you to
chapter's a TED talk,
Mm.
is what you're saying, and then he's like explaining it.
learn? Kind
at the
of. Like
It also feels like in in school, it was like they always told you, yeah, just have your examples of these challenges you had for an interview, where it's like, oh, tell a story about how you did this and that. And, it read so much like just like that sort of like interview preparation thing to me that I've been accustomed to. So it's kind of a
Sounds
fun.
like isn't this what he's doing now? Is he at Cornell, like teaching?
Yeah, he's not a
Yeah.
teacher. He's a they have a special term for it. It's like professional in residence or something like that, where it's basically like he's like an advisor and like he advises on curriculum, but then he also has like one-on-one meetings with students and teachers, and like he's just kind of like a resource for the school. And he worked with another college at a similar capacity, and like a few other like organizations where he's like involved to varying degrees. But yeah, basically he says in the book that like what he wants to focus on in his retirement is helping to educate the next generation of business leaders,
Mhm.
with like a bit of a bend obviously towards gaming. Because he's like working with like a gaming specific charity, a couple other organizations like that. So yeah, check it out. I think it's a good read. I think it's worth your time. And I think if you're into audiobooks or if you want to try to get into audiobooks, I did the audiobook and I thought it was really great. He narrates the whole thing, which I think like is cool. Obviously Reggie's a good speaker.
I've been listening to it. I've got about like 20 minutes left, I think, before it's done. I just like put it on today and just kept listening.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, it's just you get to hear a lot of Reggie. He's got that, signature voice where you're just like, yeah, this is Reggie.
There's a
and
nice
it's nice. It's comforting.
Yeah, definitely. There's like a nice bonus too for the audiobook where he has like it's like an hour and a half like podcast that he did with Jeff Keighley, and it's just talking about like other interesting anecdotes that didn't make it to the book, because like they didn't fit the format or whatever. So it's just like him like telling old stories and like Jeff being like, oh yeah, like, oh, do you remember this thing like fucking that happened like 11 years ago and we were both there and how cool was that? It's just like, it's pretty cool. It's a good little extra tidbit too. So, highly recommend you check it out. All right. So we're at a bit of a crossroads here, gang. Here's my question to you. We have the question block. We also talked about potentially checking in a little bit on Mario Strikers Battle League. I think maybe we punt that for next week and we get into these questions. How do we feel about that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
All right, there you go. So we're going to kick things off with this question that got submitted by Scrubicus. I always do this. I always want to say Scrubicus, like it's like Spartacus, but I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it.
I think it's Scribicious, isn't
Scribicious?
it? Like delicious.
That makes sense. And Scribicious did send us chocolate, which is delicious. So
It rhymes, so it must be true.
hasn't shown up yet because the post office refuses to tell me where it is. We'll see what happens.
Liars.
So we'll go with Scribicious for now, and you got to tell me how to pronounce it over on the Discord. The question is, which Wii game would you guys like to see as a remake or comeback on the Switch? So I have an answer here. I am kind of like ambivalent on whether it's a remake or like just a new game. I think I'd rather have a new game, but it's Punch-Out, which is not a Wii specific game, but Punch-Out on Wii is the latest entry in the
That's cool.
the franchise,
And it's great.
I had some.
It's
like,
awesome.
I had to think through, and I had a few that died on the vine over on the Wii. Trauma Center was one. Do you remember Atlas's
I
Trauma
do.
Center?
Hmm.
Loved that on the DS and on the Wii. I felt like it would be a great fit on the Switch with the Joy-Cons and like doing all of the stuff like the incisions and things. I loved that game.
That game used to make me laugh
What?
so much because, like, you remember, like, when you would lose, there was, like, a little, like, scene where it was, like, you killed your patient and the doctor, like, retires in disgrace and, like, goes off to die in the woods or some
Yeah.
shit. Like, it's like, this is really intense. People are going to die if you're a surgeon. You can't react this way, man.
Yeah, I loved those games. They were great. The last Wario Land entry was on the Wii. It was developed by Goodfill of Kirby's Epic Yarn and Yoshi Woolly World fame. Wario Land Shake It. I obviously want another Wario Land game at some point. It'd be great if they could revive that series. And then another Code R, which I dug out of my collection.
Wow.
If I don't know if either of you know this game. It did
Nope.
not get released in North America. It's a Nintendo published game that never made it out of Europe or Japan.
That's weird.
And it's a direct follow-up to another Code on the DS. I don't know if you know that game either.
No.
And it's a visual novel essentially, with like puzzles and things you've got to do. And obviously Nintendo wasn't sure. This was part of the Touch generations. Remember those? Nintendo obviously wasn't sure if people knew what a visual novel was because it says read and solve like a mystery novel, and then on the back it says basic reading ability is needed to fully enjoy this game, like in bold writing, like just telling
I
you
mean, when
that
you
you
think
need to
about
know
it,
how to read.
visual novels were not a thing back then. I mean, they were a thing. That's not what I mean to say, but at least in the West, they were certainly not popular at
Oh
that
yeah,
point.
back in 2009 they were
No.
not crazy popular.
I feel like they didn't
Yeah.
really like get a lot of traction here until kind of the end of that. Like, I feel like the PS3 and Vita had them, and they kind of became more popular since then because now they're like everywhere. But back then, I'm sure that was
Yeah.
a pretty novel thing for Western players.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and this was a great game. I liked. I preferred another Code on the DS. I think the DS version did a lot more with, um, like the input methods that console had. Like those points where you had to like close it in order to make impressions of like things, like onto paper, or you would blow into the microphone to blow off dust off of stuff. This one was very much just like, oh, you use the motion stuff to do some cool things. Like it's not a lot you could do with it. But I liked the story. I liked Ashley as a character. I thought she was really cool. And it was nice to see her have like a follow up to that game. The developer Sing was one of my favorites. They're now gone, sadly. They did Hotel Dusk as well, which was a really great game on DS, which everyone should check out.
Yeah. Uh, the ones I want, there's a couple RPGs, definitely Fire Emblem, Radiant Dawn, but at this point I'm like, give me a collection because
Yeah.
that's a sequel to the GameCube game. I'm like, just give me both of those remade and I don't have to pay $300 for the GameCube one. That'd be nice. The Last Story is another one. This was one of those RPGs that got brought that RPG fans were just like, bring over Xenoblade, bring over Last Story, and this was one that got like brought over after a while. I remember having chances to pick that one up at like GameStops here and there for like $20 or so, and now it's just like I haven't even looked because I don't want to know how much those will go for at this point. And then there's a bunch of like little lost eShop games from that era. The ones that I specifically wanted were like these weird like tower defense Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles spin-off things, and I'd never gotten them on Wii. This was prior to me like even leaving high school or so, where I'd have like a consistent income or anything. So I never bought anything on the Wii eShop, and so I would love to see some of those that have just been like lost to time at that point.
There you go. So keeping on the retro side of things, one of our Patreon supporters, Trendy Brendy, wrote in and said, "You guys make any 3DS/Wii U purchases? Credit card compatibility just went out the window, so anything in the future will probably have to be done via adding with a or with a gift card. Excuse me. My biggest gets were Professor Layton and the Azrin Legacy for $40. It goes for $90 loose, and Rhythm Thief for $4 on sales. It goes for for $4 on sale. It goes for 150 loose. So that's pretty good. That's two good gets, I'd say.
Yeah.
Did either of you buy anything?
I don't own either of those consoles anymore, or ever in the case of the Wii U. So no, I haven't picked anything up. But yeah, people definitely should refer back to our episode on the 3DS and Wii U.
And what episode was that, Steve?
I'm not sure, but the link will be down in the description.
There you go.
Or in the show notes, so you can definitely go check that one out. I know Chuy had like a pretty comprehensive list in that episode, which people should go listen to.
Yo, my
There's a
God,
ton of
we got fucking called out about that episode. So somebody on Twitter was like asking about like, oh, like who's got like a good list of like recommendations or whatever, and Timberwolf Ciara, who listens to the show, was nice enough to plug our episode, and the person was like, "Oh, they didn't mention any games in this series," and I was like, "Fuck! I thought we were so good. I thought Chuy rattled off like 95 games. I thought
what did we miss?
Let me find it. Let me find it. I forget.
I will say while you look for it, I haven't picked anything up quite recently. I want to report back next week. Maybe there's probably already a video out there with people testing it out. But if I recall, the eShops are still connected. I think you can add money through a credit card on the Switch eShop, and that will appear on your 3DS and Wii U eShop. I'll test it out this week. I've been kind of waiting before doing that just to give it a test and everything. I kind of wonder if that will be the case with Nintendo eShop cards later on too, because even though those you won't be able to enter them in your 3DS or Wii U, if all of those accounts are connected, it will probably still work even after they cut that off, I think, this fall. So I'll report back.
It's just whether they turn off the ability to like even click purchase or download, right? I found the tweet, by the way, Pete. Apparently we missed Level 5's Guild collaboration series like Crimson Shroud and Liberation Maiden. And those are completely stuck on the 3DS. That was from Brandon Way, which I think is Sierra's brother, if I'm not mistaken.
There we go. We missed some.
Could be. Yeah. So we missed some. But I still think it's a good list. Worth checking out. We missed like 4 or 5 games ever, I think.
We listed the good ones. Shade.
Shade intended.
And I'll say too, ever since we got that little rumor leak thing of GBA possibly coming, I've been like, ooh, do I buy some of these on the Wii U eShop, or do I just risk it and wait and see if they pop up online? So yeah, I've been torn about that, but there are still some like 3DS games I do want to get, like Ever Oasis is one. We don't know if that's ever gonna come back in any way. What Grezzo's up to, who knows? Miitopia 2, I don't know.
They're working on the Mother remake and the...
Stop teasing me! You know what I want. Come on. Unbelievable. Anyway. So I think honestly, the biggest thing that kept me from getting any of these was I got my Steam Deck, and now I just feel like I'm like, let's play it over there.
Yeah, that's because true. Wind Waker HD does play at a wonderful 60 frames per second.
It does.
On Steam Deck.
It does. All right.
Amazing.
So this next one comes from one of our Patreon producers, that Doc guy, who wrote in and said, Nintendo has gone out of their way to remove a lot of remixes and other basic uploads of their soundtracks recently. Do you think this means they're going to be putting out some kind of method to listen to their music? I don't know. I'm inclined to say no, because it doesn't feel like the kind of thing Nintendo would do, even though they should, and it makes sense. And other
They've
publishers like
they've
Square have done it.
sometimes, right? They did it with the Mario Odyssey soundtrack. You could play that on. You could buy that everywhere. I think it's on Spotify as well.
Is
I
it?
remember buying it on iTunes before they made it available everywhere. Um, I think, like, obviously we had the Zelda soundtrack coming out on CD. It may have only been in Japan, but you could import those. Then there was the Pokemon thing that they've recently done, like the Pokemon Sound Library, I think it's called, where they took down all of the music from YouTube, did takedown notices for everything, and then the following week that Pokemon Sound Library came out. So it does make me think that if they're ramping up these takedown notices, that they're kind of approaching something, which would be nice. But maybe I'm just being optimistic because
I hope you're right.
Well,
I want
there
that.
are some. There's the 3D All Stars. They had like all the 64 Sunshine and Galaxy. I was gonna say Odyssey, but those are all on there. Animal Crossing is getting like another volume for that game, New Horizons. So I think it's gonna be a 5 CD set with 1 DVD on there. I'm really excited about that DVD. Already ordered it. Along with like the special KK Slider record as well, which is pretty cool. I feel like the thing is like they're just not consistent in how they release these things. It's like every single way has been different, basically. Like some of them are like, oh yeah, you can get this digitally, and others are like, nope, just a hard copy, and then others are like, you can listen to it in this game. So
Yeah,
there's no like consistency about how they pop up.
I think to your point, the fact that they are doing this like makes me think that it's for some reason. But like, I don't know. I just have such a hard time thinking that they're actually going to do something with this, like in the way that like I think that Doc is asking about anyway, right? Like Square did this a couple years ago where they put like their entire library of soundtracks just like up on Spotify, up on like Apple Music, all that stuff. Like you can just get them in these places.
And pretty soon you'll be able to buy them as NFTs.
And the idea that Nintendo would do that, I think it makes a lot of sense on paper, like the actual idea of doing it. But will they actually do it? I don't know. Probably not. If I had
what we're gonna get is, because they're so behind the times, is Nintendo releasing soundtracks on hit clips, and we're gonna get little 60-second snippets on a Tiger Electronics hit clip, and we're gonna have to listen to them on those little plastic things in like mono, 16 kilobits per second.
That would be sick.
More Build-A-Bear voice boxes for all the characters. Yes. That's it. My favorite thing, though, I've been more and more interested to going to like one of their Zelda orchestra performances. And like a Splatoon one would be cool as well. So if they did more of those like live performances, I think that'd be pretty cool.
They only seem to do the Splatoon ones in Japan, don't they?
Splatoon's huge there. It's so huge. I'm jealous.
I've seen them with like the holographic Squid Sisters and stuff. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. When KK Slider opened, amazing. I mean, he should be headlining, but we'll accept it.
I guess. All right, so last question of the day is going to go to another one of our Patreon producers, Snackago, a.k.a. Mr. Zaydita, who wrote in and said, with releases like Fire Emblem Warriors and Hyrule Warriors, we see Nintendo going on a trend of telling smaller contained stories in Musou spin-offs developed by Koei Techmo. Do you think there's a reason why Nintendo persists on this and this trend that frustrates many fans? Yeah, I mean, the simple answer, money. So I did a little bit of digging to see what the returns on these games looks like. They sell well. That's why. So you look at the first one you brought up, right? Fire Emblem Warriors. Fire Emblem Warriors, as of April 2018, Koei Techmo revealed that the game sold 1 million copies worldwide. I'm sure it sold more since then, but just using 1 million as a baseline, like a minimum that it could have made, that's pretty damn good. Because when you compare that to Fire Emblem Three Houses, which is the best-selling game in the Fire Emblem franchise, that sold, as of December 2020, so again, 2 years ago, right? There's a margin of error there. Sold 3.40 million copies. So these spin-off games, right, that Nintendo's publishing, but not having to spend money or time to develop, are selling a third as good as the actual games themselves. That's pretty great. And then again, you pull up Hyrule Warriors, right? As of 2020, according to this article from NME.com, it had shipped 4 million units. And this is as of January 5th, 2020. So assuming that that's roughly correct, it's a similar trajectory, right? Where it's like, that's about, a quarter, a third of the sales that Breath of the Wild has had year to date. So, yeah, right? Like, I mean, for the fans that like these games, there is a community that really loves Musos. I don't, but a lot of people do. And they sell well. And they probably take very little from Nintendo to actually, like, create, aside from lending some development assets, having, you know, maybe a small team of people to, like, help out and overlook things and make sure that they're, you know, handling the IP consistently and all that good stuff. But they have a good relationship with Koei Techmo, right? They've worked with them on a lot of stuff at this point. So why not is the better question.
Yeah, and I mean, we get more cutscenes.
I guess Zaid's issue, and probably people's issue with it, is that its stories locked behind these games, right? Like, I had issue with a brand new Half-Life game coming out after 20 years and only being available in virtual reality, where I didn't want to play that game. And I can understand fans' frustrations with being in love with, say, the Persona series, and really wanting to see that, seeing that story with the Phantom Thieves again, and it's in a game where you just cannot stand the gameplay enough to get through it.
Yep.
And it sucks because it could be such a good experience. It's just that gameplay doesn't work for people.
I mean, I think it's a tactic.
That being said,
I think they know that people will buy it because they want to see the story, and they're like, they won't.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I looked up the latest Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity. That's already sold 4 million copies as of last January. So
how many?
4 million as of last January. So I imagine that's sold even more at this point.
And that doesn't even take into account the DLC on top of that, too, because they had paid DLC. Yeah.
I forgot there was two Hyrule Warriors. That's the one I was talking about, was the second one. I forgot that there was one before that even.
Yeah, I mean, there was the first one came out on Wii U and then had a re-release, right?
It was on 3DS, I think, as well.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Because that was where they had, like, Linkle, where it was like, it's a female Link, and I think she was only on 3DS.
And that was the other new 3DS game, I think.
Oh, shit, you're right. Yeah, that's like the other, like, that. It's that, Xenoblade, Minecraft, and, like, one other game, I think.
I think Earthbound was, like, new 3DS eShop only, which was a weird choice.
That might be true. Yeah.
Can you imagine the frame rate if that ran on an old 3DS? Because, like, those games do not even run well on the Switch.
On the Switch? I doubt it even runs well on the new 3DS. I bet that thing's like 10 FPS. Yeah, I mean, the reality is, like, I wish they would stop this trend. I hate it, but I can't think of a good reason to not do it, is the thing, right? Like, aside from the fans like us that are, like, annoyed, but it's like, well,
yeah,
watch it on YouTube. I don't know, you know, like, I'm sure they just don't care.
That's the way, yeah. That's I think the only move, really. I wish they would do it and the stories wouldn't be canon, or they wouldn't be kind of essential, you know?
Yeah.
It feels like they could have done something in those universes that didn't revolve around characters we knew about. It could have been a different story. Like, we've seen that with Star Wars.
Yeah, but then no one's going to play it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that, because, like, look at Star Wars, right? With, is it like Rogue One or whatever, where it's like a Star Wars story, and it's like characters we didn't know, stuff we hadn't seen, but it's still in that world. It still feels like Star Wars. I feel like you could do something like that.
I don't think that's as
Wild,
easy to do with something that isn't Star Wars, though. Like, Star Wars is such a broad universe that, like, the idea of being like, this is a story about somebody other than a Jedi named Skywalker, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm used to that. That's a thing. But if you're like, oh, it's a Breath of the Wild sequel, right? Or it's set in the world of Breath of the Wild, but no Link, no Zelda, you'd be like, cool, pass.
And with something
Well, I
that's
mean,
like,
the appeal of those games, though, is that you can play, like, especially in Hyrule Warriors 2, the appeal is that you can play as the divine beasts, right? You can play as a Bosa, for example, if you want to, or Rivali.
I mean, that's a appeal. I don't know if I'd say it's the appeal, but I mean, to your
I like
point,
that.
you could have done something with that, I guess. But yeah, I
See,
don't know.
and that's
Then
like,
it's still canon, though.
I resonate with that too, though, because I was like, man, I really want to play a Zelda game as Zelda. That'd be really cool. And so I did get to do that with Age of Calamity. Whereas, like, with Fire Emblem, that draw just isn't there because I'm like, I move all my units. Like, I feel like I'm playing as these characters already. Like,
It has to be
is
story stuff. Otherwise, there's like, it's like, what's the point, right? Like, well, like, why else would I do this? Because like, you look at like
But you really like the gameplay, and there are obviously millions
Right.
of people that do like it. Yeah.
Yeah, but like, if you're gonna do that, why even make it licensed, right? Like, if you
Well, I mean, they
just
they
make a hot
the,
Muso,
you know, they do that anyway with Dynasty
Warriors.
Warriors, right?
Right,
Yeah,
but that's
so
my
it's like-
point, right? Like, those games, I think, are the games that are made to appeal for folks that like are dying for a Muso, and these games, I think, are like for that audience, but also to try and capitalize on the success of other IP that is like, oh, you liked Persona 5, here's some more of it. I wouldn't have bought that game otherwise, but they got my money. I didn't fucking finish it, but what do they care? You know?
yeah.
According to Famitsu, as of 2020, Dynasty Warriors in total, this whole series has sold 21 million copies. Like the two Hyrule Warriors games alone, like that's like 8 million. Add in that, I guess Persona 5 Strikers probably is another couple of million. You're getting up to like half the sales of Dynasty Warriors just because they're licensed properties.
Yeah. Which is good business for Koei. You know, like that's a good deal for them. And for, you know, Nintendo, Atlas, whomever, right? Like, why not? Why not do it? Doesn't take much from you to leverage your IP in a way where you can make more money and keep it in the conversation, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a win-win for the developer. I think it's just if you're somebody in the Venn diagram of folks who's like, oh, I love the Persona, I love Breath of the Wild, and you fucking hate Musos, then, well, you're shit out of luck, you know? And as one of those folks, I empathize. But I don't think they're going to stop. Why would they? If anything, I bet you see more of them. They're printing money hand over fist.
They're going to make a Xenoblade Muso any day now.
Oh god. Yeah.
It's not that good.
Let's do a Splatoon Muso. Animal Crossing Muso. We're all
Remember when
fighting.
Pokemon
We
was
play
making
Tom
their-
Nook and we're fighting everyone up.
I love that. Animal Crossing Muso. Let's
Animal
go.
Crossing would be great. I would get that for sure.
10 out of 10. Game
Because
of the year.
there's like no story to it already.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Tom Nook's knocking on everyone's doors. He's cashing in on those loans he's given out finally, and everyone's revolting against him.
And then fight.
It's
Yeah,
perfect.
Timmy and Tommy's coming along to help out as well.
Those little bastards. And Isabel leads the villagers. She rises up against Tom Nook.
Well, she like the Pied Piper. She just plays music, and the villagers like follow her along. It's like your island theme. It reads it from your save, and she plays it, and they all follow her along to the battle.
That's great because I made mine Megalovania from Undertale, so that's a fucking hot beat. That'd be great. That'd be a great fight song.
I love it.
All right. So thank you to everybody who wrote in for this week's episode of Nintendo Noise. If we didn't get to your question yet, don't worry. We saved it for next week. There's two of them that we're going to do on flip screen proper because they're like not really Nintendo related. So wherever you wrote in, don't worry. We're going to answer your question at some point. We got you. We got you. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you again for writing in. If you are a new listener, remember, like, share, subscribe, follow along however you can. Write in if you never have before. Hit us up at questions@flipscreen.games. Join the Discord where every week we have a thread asking for brand new questions. All kinds of good stuff. There's a bunch of ways for you to write in, a bunch of ways for you to get involved, however you choose to do so. We appreciate you spending your time with us. We appreciate you coming to chat games with us. I hope you have a good week. I hope you stay safe. Until next week, for Nintendo Noise, I've been Pete. He's been Chewy, and he's been Steve. We'll see you next week.